All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this special webinar. My name is Andrew Keller. I'm the Senior Director of Executive Office Operations and Strategic Initiatives at CSBA. I'm overseeing the project, the Education Workforce Housing Workshop Series. And I'm doing so in partnership with our excellent foundation partners at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, who I'd like to just want to thank them first for their generous support, without which we wouldn't be doing any of this. They helped support the research that led to this, the handbook that was developed, and this workshop opportunity. And again, we're super appreciative for their support. So in this webinar today, we'll be giving you a quick 30-minute overview of the housing workshop that's starting this summer. And we'll go into a little bit about what your role would be as a potential participant. So we've got a lot of information to get to right out at the beginning. So we'd ask that if you have any questions, please log them in the Q&A function. That way we'll make sure we track them, and we'll have some time at the end to come back and answer them. Assuming we can get through it all pretty quickly, because we know it's only about 30 minutes here. So with that, we'll answer any of those questions that we can't get to in writing after the webinar. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda. So we'll do some quick introductions at the top and an overview. We'll go over the goals and the outcomes of the workshop itself, because I'm sure you all are very curious about what this is going to entail from your perspective. And then we'll share the tentative schedule and the content. I say tentative because it's all kind of still being developed to make sure we've got the right content, and some of it's going to be related to the specific cohort of districts that are in the final workshop. And then we'll provide some details on what participation would look like for your team, as well as the level of commitment involved. So we'll start with a little bit of an introduction. So my role on the team right there at the top will mostly be in the background as the project lead. I'll be working with other folks at CSBA, such as our wonderful comms team, who thank you for helping us put this together. Some of them are on the call, as well as our member services team and other groups within CSBA that many of you are familiar with. In full disclosure, I am in no way an expert on housing. So of course, we've assembled a truly dynamic and really fantastic team of experts on the project that I'd like to introduce. So I'll turn it over to Danny first to introduce our project coordination team. Danny.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Andrew, and pleasure to meet everybody. I'm actually going to let Craig Edelman on our team give the little intro first, if that's okay, Andrew. All right. Hey, Craig, thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Great to be with you all today. My name's Craig Edelman, and I am a senior principal at LaSar Development Consultants. I co-lead our housing team at LaSar, and we are really excited to just now be embarking on an engagement with CSBA and you all for this scope of work. So we're just getting engaged right now. We've had some great initial conversations with Andrew and his team, and just wanted to share that LaSar brings a really unique set of skills to help lead and coordinate this work. First and foremost, we're a mission-driven organization focused on solving the housing and homelessness crisis in California, of which this work is central. And then secondly, our sister company, the Global Policy Leadership Academy, is a leader in capacity building, training, and shared learning environments. And so I'm really excited to be joined by Danny, who you just met on our housing team, who brings some of the technical expertise on housing, and then Jessica Ripper as well, who is a principal with LaSar and with the Global Policy Leadership Academy, who spearheads our work in running educational and training programs and workshops like we're doing here. So we're really excited to be with you. And one of the things that excites us the most is the opportunity for cross-sector collaborations. And this is a great example of that, of thinking about housing, education, workforce all together and trying to find ways, new innovative ways to align the outcomes we're all seeking to achieve.
Great, thank you, Craig. Appreciate it. I forgot one housekeeping item. I just wanted to remind all participants that the webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a copy of the recording after the webinar, because that's an important part for those who couldn't make it. This is, again, is important to understand what you're getting into before you decide whether or not your team wants to continue. So just a heads up that it's being recorded, and we will share out after the fact. So with that, Craig, I'll turn it over to our research team. We'll start with Jeff from UC Berkeley. So Jeff, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be here. My name is Jeff Vincent. I'm at the Center for Cities and Schools at UC Berkeley, and we're one of the lead partners, researchers on the larger report on education, workforce, housing. And so we are a interdisciplinary applied public policy center at Berkeley, made up of education researchers and urban planners. And so we do a lot of work with school districts and cities across the state on land use related issues, particularly school facility related issues. So happy to be here, and I'll ask Victoria Beckley to introduce herself quickly.
Hey everyone, I'm Victoria. I'm working with Jeff as a graduate student researcher at the Center for Cities and Schools. Good to be here.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Victoria. So next, I'll turn it over to Dana to introduce the UCLA team. Dana.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, I'm Dana Cuff. I'm director of City Lab at UCLA, where we have 20 years of experience working in affordable housing and land use issues. And we were really lucky to partner with Jeff Vincent and his team and the Turner Center and CSBA to really come up with the idea that school lands could become a real resource for the state of California as much as the different districts, so that we could support the children, their teachers, their janitors, their cafeteria workers, and all the people who really we rely on to bring in the next generation of Californians. I'm joined by Rain Laborde, and so I'll just turn it over to her to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Rain Laborde Ruiz. I'm the Associate Director of City Lab and looking forward to coming to know all of you.
Great, thank you, Dana. Thank you, Rain. So as you can all see, we've got a pretty solid team here. So with that, we're going to dive right into the next. And I believe, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you to give a little bit of background on the project and the work that led us here and talk about our goals with the workshop. So let me get the next slide going for you here. And there you go, Jeff. It's all you.
Great. So, as you're probably aware, this is, a kind of a phase 2, if you will, of the work we've been doing with CSBA and funded by the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative on education, workforce, housing. And, basically our team, City Lab, the Turner Center for Housing Innovation in Berkeley, and us and CSBA folks, spent the last almost 2 years doing this research on, the possibilities, the opportunities, and the challenges with developing workforce housing on school district-owned land, for teachers and staff. And so you've probably seen the research report that came out of that, and then the handbook that's really meant to be, more kind of a user-friendly guide of the findings, kind of how to work through it. And so you can see the covers there on the slide. So we got a grant from CZI to pilot an academy, a statewide workshop, which is what we're here to talk about today, with a set of districts that are interested in pursuing this. And it really builds upon a lot of interests that we documented in our findings in the report, and recent successes, including, there's been four existing projects across the state, but one just opened in Jefferson Union High School earlier this year, which is in the South Bay, here in the Bay Area. We're seeing, lots of legislation, or some legislation anyway, moving forward in the legislature, which is, I think, very encouraging. AB 2295, Richard Bloom's bill on kind of allowable densities and trying to reduce the need for rezoning on school-owned properties. And then when we put feelers out for what districts are interested in working on this and working together on this issue and moving it forward in their districts, we got nearly 50 districts who were expressed a lot of interest. So I think there's a lot of interest to tap into. And why don't you advance to the next slide? And that's really what our pilot project is about. So I'll just jump into the goals real quick, Andrew, and then hand it off to the next person. But our big goals here are, for you all participating in your district, is to develop a kind of case-making document for your colleagues to convince them that, yeah, this is something our district could benefit from. It's something that's potentially feasible, and we should take the next steps to pursue further. And so, I call that kind of a pitch deck, if you will, or something, but we'll kind of talk a little bit later and we'll develop what the framework for that is. But it'll be a document or a set of information that you'll be able to kind of use in your district to kind of make the case. Also, we'll build a peer learning network because, this is cutting edge new stuff. Everyone's learning day by day. We've got some lessons from the developments on the ground, but there's much to be learned. So peer learning network aspect. And we're really about deepening your understanding or deepening all of our understandings of the local needs and opportunities in your district. So, our hope is it'll be really catered to your specific district and your specific properties. And most importantly, maybe it's empowering you and your colleagues as an advocate for this and how to think about it smartly with your school leadership as well as with your communities. So that's an overview of the goals. Maybe I'll hand it back to you, Andrew, to move forward.
Yeah, you got it. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the schedule here, and then I'm going to kick it to Rain and Dana to go through sort of the some additional details here. So at a high level, we just want to make sure you all are aware of kind of what's happening in the background here. So this is an overview of where this project has been. So in the early stages of the year, we did some funding and planning, and this was with support from Chan Zuckerberg Initiative again. And we figured out exactly what we wanted to do, what the schedule was. We started drafting some curriculum. So where we are now is we're at a stage where we're doing recruitment of districts to participate in the cohort. As you can understand, this is a very novel approach. So it took a lot of time to figure out what's going to be the right approach and how do we right size it, given the scope of the state as a very large state. So that's where we're at now, and that's why you all are here. You've expressed some interest in being involved in this workshop. So we're going to work to narrow that pool of candidates, 49 districts. I mean, my goodness, narrow that down to our first initial cohort and put you all through the workshop sessions. And then as that's, July through November and ending at about our AEC, which is December 1st through 3rd. And then following that, we want to build out a resource library for districts that weren't part of that cohort. But the idea is this is an ongoing library where districts can go to get access resources like templates, more things like the guide and other research and even media about these sorts of projects. And that'll happen more towards November and January of 2023. And the idea is at CSBA, we want to scale this up and make this something that's not just a one-off pilot that we do, but we want to find a way to make this more of an ongoing opportunity every year. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Rain, I think, to talk a little bit more about the tentative schedule.
I think I'm going to start, Andrew. So we basically are sketching out a series of workshops, which are really a hands-on, customized way of working with the different districts who end up in the academy to think through how your particular issues and projects can be advanced. And that really comes out of the last 2 years of research of looking at districts who have had success and who've met certain barriers that we've learned from. And this isn't an easy kind of development to undertake. And it's made for the brave and the hardy. And I think we're really great teachers in a workshop context. I'm a professor of architecture and of planning at UCLA, and we've developed these kind of workshops over the last 20 years to really bring new kinds of housing into public sector situations. So we're going to have 5 workshops. The first one and the last one will be in person, real life, real time. And they're tied to meetings that you may be likely to attend. The first one is the Leadership Institute in July, that'll be in Los Angeles, our hometown. And the last one will be in December in San Diego. Next slide. Sorry for the background noise. Each of these workshop sessions is really designed to bring a particular focus that we know is essential to developing education workforce housing on school land. So the first session is going to be a site visit in Los Angeles to some of the development that have been built, so you can see the real successes and benefits that education workforce housing can have. And we'll talk with some of the stakeholders and actors who made that housing happen. Then we'll move into remote sessions where we really do deep dives into various kinds of technical issues. There's always a hands-on component, so it won't be deadly Zoom world, but one that really is engaging and expects a lot back from the participants in terms of active engagement. We'll deal with regulations and funding, site and design, and community impact, which we think are three of the most crucial components of really being able to successfully forward housing projects on your school land. And the last session, which will be the one in December in person again, will be a share out where the work that you do around your district will actually be something you can brag about, and also it'll be something that other districts can learn from. Next slide. And I think this goes to Rain now.
Yeah, so during these sessions, and in particular, those 3 remote sessions, we'll really structure them as a conversation, a presentation, and an activity. It will include consultants and partners who are in the field, who have experience directly developing in various district contexts. And then between sessions, to make sure that these are as customized and robust as possible, we'll be asking you as the teams to complete workbook and documentation tasks that are directly related to this case-making document that Jeff and Dana have mentioned. During that time, we'll expect that you'll be meeting with your local staff to answer questions, but we'll also be there for you as a resource throughout and always here for questions and coordination. We can move to the next slide. Again, those outcomes are related to the case-making document. So the workbook we see as your district data profile that you're building over time, your needs, how many teachers do you have, who's making below 80% area median income, what land do you hold? Together we'll work to figure out what are ideal development sites in those land holdings. It'll really build the targeted research that's generated from each session and informs the next session. And again, we'll have that one-on-one technical assistance, both in the interim while you're working on your workbook, and also through one-on-one meetings during the workshop sessions. In architecture, we really refer to these as desk crits, where we'll get to spend time talking to you as individual districts about your specific roadblocks and hopes.
Okay, thank you, Rain. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our participation and commitment that we're asking of you all as district teams. This is really the important part of this webinar, is we want you to understand kind of what you can expect as part of this. So the commitment we're asking to participate in this several months long series of workshops is that you have a participant team that includes trustees, superintendents, members of the cabinet, and your facilities director. The idea is that we want active, regular participation by at least 2 team members for all 5 sessions. In particular, 2 district leadership team members, because we know, and many of you who are school board members know how important this work is. If there isn't that leadership buy-in and momentum behind it, these projects, they're very long. They can fall apart without that that full commitment of a team. And we want to have those folks attend each session, because you won't get the full benefit that you would be able to put into a case-making document if you don't have a full team behind it. You saw those topics, right? They can be fairly meaty. And then we're asking that you have a minimum participation in 2 of those in-person sessions and 3 remote sessions, with the workbook activities that we covered earlier on the schedule that Rain went over. And then last, we'll include a letter of agreement to indicate that you're participating, that you've got a team, that you're able to make that commitment, so we know that your district is an official candidate for this work as we're kind of refining that final cohort. So with that, I think that's kind of starting to wrap things up. So our next steps immediately after the webinar, we'll get a follow-up email from us with any lingering questions that come up in the discussion next. If there's any questions we don't get to, we'll follow up there. But then you're also going to get, and this is the important piece, you're going to get a brief survey, and it's not a very long survey. It's very simple, but we're just looking to understand who your team is and a little bit more information about what you're able to commit to. And that helps us to refine, who's moving forward in this process and who's looked at this and said, oh, that's going to be a lot for us this year. We might not be able to do it. In order to, that data will help us select the final cohort. So that process, for transparency, we're going to review the survey data. We're going to contact the finalists for interviews, and then we'll ask for that letter of agreement from some of those finalists to help us understand who who's in this and who's going to be able to commit to the whole thing. So a sense of how those finalists will be selected. We're going to look for teams that have multiple interested staff, with or without board support. That's one of the things we want to know. Whether your team is at the beginning of consideration in this process, as opposed to those teams that have, maybe already broken ground, right? We also want to look at a geographic and demographic spread. Again, this is a pilot, but we want it to be as broadly representative of statewide cases as possible. And then we'll do kind of bonus points for, teams that have, or districts rather, that have districts or county offices rather, that have entry-level salaries below 80% AMI, annual median income. They have high teacher turnover, or perhaps a high percentage of beginner teachers. So with that, I think it's time for some questions. I know we've got at least one in the Q&A. So I'll go ahead and read that out. The city is very interested in having our district do this. Can the city participate as well? So I think I can take that on. I think adding the city to your team is probably a bonus point that we hadn't considered, right? I'm looking at Dana, I got a thumbs up there, and that's a good thumb to have up. So for sure, I think that's part of the buy-in, is that it's not just within your district, but we know the community is going to be important there. Anybody else?
I think that'd be excellent. We would want still to have the school representation, but we could easily add a third member to the team, which would be fantastic.
And I would share that the cities will typically play an important role regardless. So having them on board, because things like land use approvals, and to some degree, to the extent we're accessing various sources of financing or subsidy, they may play a critical role as well. So I like the idea.
All right, if anybody has other questions, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A, and we're happy to answer them. I mean, we're about at time, but I think without any further questions, I think we're ready for some next steps. So, we'll be in touch very soon with the survey responses. We'll send out for any of your colleagues who may be interested in participating here. We'll make sure they get the link to the survey and the link to the recording that we'll send out. Got one more question that popped up in Q&A, and the question is, will you help us fundraise? I think that's a very interesting question, and CSBA certainly can't support the fundraising. We're going to have to leave that out, but we will talk a little bit about what that might look like. So it depends on the help that you're looking for. But does anybody else on the panel want to take that one on?
Well, I think we could do the part of that we could do is we can, in the finance and regulation workshop, we'll let them know what kinds of funding mechanisms are available. I don't think we would be stepping in to help with the fundraising itself, but we can certainly outline the rainbow of possible funding sources that any school district would want to know about, and how you would access those kinds of funds. And and we should add to that the case-making document itself would be an extremely useful fundraising mechanism for anyone trying to seek funding for their projects.
Any additional thoughts from the panel, or any additional questions from participants? Okay, that's it. If there's any questions, obviously in the meantime, you can shoot me an email. My contact information is here displayed on the screen. We'll send out that survey this afternoon for you all and your teams to express further interest in continuing on here, or to share with your colleagues who weren't able to watch this. But that's it. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank our panelists for being involved and for helping to push this work forward. We couldn't do this without you. CSBA is eternally grateful for your support and partnership here. And of course, to the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative for getting us to this point and helping to see this work forward. And again, I want to shout out to my comms team who's helping run this webinar here. So with that, thanks everybody. We're looking forward to a super fascinating webinar. And I'm personally looking forward to growing this little seedling of ours into a really massive tree that can really support retaining staff and teachers in the great state of California. So thank you all, and we'll be in touch soon. Take care.